to McKibbin. Welcome to Bedtime Stories. Thank you for enjoying my previous bedtime story video. Hope it helped all of you have sweet dreams and great things and good sleep. So today I'm back with another bedtime story video, and I'm going to read to you more stories of Thomas the Tank Engine. And our first one is Thomas-Saurus Rex. Thomas popped into the yard after a long day. He saw James and Gordon talking together. When he stopped at the water tower, he could hear everything they said. I am too important to pull such an ancient load, said Gordon. Yes, replied James. I am glad they brought that old bucket of bolts to do it. The engines here are all too fine. I'm surprised he can do anything. He is so old. Well, it makes sense for him to pull that special. The fossils deserve each other, said James. Both of the engines laughed. Thomas wondered what they were talking about. Percy was waiting when Thomas got to the shed. Did you see Stephanie? Asked Percy. Did you see what his special is? No, but I heard Gordon and James talking about it, answered Thomas. They said it was a lot of old junk. I think it's kind of neat, said Percy. Don't let them hear you say that, said Thomas. They'll tease you too. Thomas liked Stephanie. Stephanie was one of the oldest engines on the whole island of Sodor. He had seen a lot and had interesting stories to tell. Thomas's favorite story was about Sir Topham Hatt as a little boy. One beautiful day, little Topham Hatt was out for a carriage ride with his grandfather. The horse was dashing through the countryside. Grandfather had saw a runt in the road, but it was too late to swerve. Crack! The carriage's axle was broken, and the horse ran off. Luckily, no one was hurt, but they were a long way from home. Just then, Stephanie, a brand new engine, came chugging by. He was pulling a load of coal, so he didn't have any passenger coaches. There was only one thing to do. Topham Hatt and his grandfather crawled up on top of the pile of coal, and off they went. When they got to town, little Topham Hatt was covered head to toe in coal dust. He was very dirty, and so was grandfather. So mother couldn't be cross. They both laughed and even had their picture taken. Thomas always liked that story, and Percy liked it too. It made them laugh to think that Sir Topham Hatt was ever that dirty. The next morning, Thomas went looking for Stephanie. Good morning, sir, said Thomas politely. Well, hello, Thomas, said Stephanie with a smile. What do you think of my special? Thomas looked at the rock with some bones in it and at the old chest. He didn't want to hurt Stephanie's feelings. It sure looks old, he stammered. It's the oldest thing I've ever pulled, laughed Stephanie. It makes me feel young. The chest is full of gems from Rolf's castle in the days of knights. This fossil is from the age of dinosaurs. It is going to be part of the museum fair at Tibet. And so am I, because I am so old, he added proudly. Thomas thought the things seemed pretty interesting, but he remembered Gordon and James saying they were junk. Thomas didn't know what to think. Just then, Sir Topham Hatt came to see the engines. Stephanie and his special must go to Timot's shed for the museum show, he said. But the hill to Timoth may be too steep for Stephanie with that valuable special, so someone will need to help push from behind. Push? I would not push a special made of solid gold, said Gordon. Let alone that pile of old junk. I only pull specials, and important ones at that. I don't think we should have to push that special, sir, said James. Thomas did not want the others to tease him, but he saw that Stephanie looked sad that no one wanted to help him. I will push Stephanie's special, he quietly volunteered. Thank you, Thomas, said Sir Topham Hatt. I appreciate when engines prove that they are really useful. And then he gave Gordon a stern look. Gordon puffed and James gave a cheeky chuckle. Better him than us, he said. Thomas pushed the special out of the yard. He heard James call out, Don't let them mistake you for that old junk and send you to the scrapyard. All the way to Timot's shed, to Timoth, Thomas worried about what everyone would say about his old special. He knew the children liked him, but would they think he was just an old fossil when they arrived with this old junk? When they arrived at Timoth, there were already lots of interesting things to see. There was a butterfly tent, a petting zoo, and a frog exhibit. Thomas helped Stephanie onto a special siding that allowed everyone to see the fossil and chest close up. But no one seemed to notice that they were there. And then Thomas heard one little boy shout with delight, Look over there, it's Thomas, and he bought a dinosaur. Soon Thomas and Stephanie were surrounded. Cool, wow, look at that. Thomas had never heard the children so excited. He was excited too. So Topham Hatt walked over to them. Thomas was surprised to see that he looked dirty. Good work, Thomas, said Sir Topham Hatt. I should have come with you and Stephanie. I got a flat tire. I haven't been this dirty in a long, long time. He laughed. Do you remember that day on the coal car, Stephanie? I sure do, chuckled Stephanie. You are a happy little boy, sir. Just like these children, they will never forget this day. And neither will I, added Sir Topham Hatt. Just then, a man with a camera walked up. He said, Everyone smile and say, Steamy, flash. The Lost Crown of Sodor. It was a busy day at Brenham Docks. Thomas and Percy were shunting trucks. One of the trucks bashed into Percy's buffer and tipped over. A crate fell out and split open. Look, peeped Percy. It's a metal man, a robot. Silly, Cranky grumbled. It's a suit of armor, like a knight used to wear. Cranky's right, said Sir Topham Hatt. In the old days, the island of Sodor was ruled by kings. The most beloved was King Gared. He lived in Yolstead Castle and wore a golden crown. The crown disappeared long ago. Sir Topham Hatt said that the ruins of Alstead Castle could be seen on the Earl of Sodor's estate. The next morning, Thomas delivered a crate to the Earl's estate. There he met Millie, the Earl's narrow gauge engine. If only I had King Godred's golden crown, the Earl said sadly. Over the next few days, Thomas, James, and Percy made many deliveries to the Earl's estate. Thomas saw his friend Jack the Digger there. I'm helping the Earl restore Alstead Castle, Jack puffed. So that's his plan, whistled Thomas. When Thomas, Percy, and James were shunting containers, Thomas saw a flatbed holding a very large crate. The Earl said it was a special delivery for the steamworks. He climbed into Thomas's cab, and the three friends pulled the crate to the steamworks. When they got there, a gantry crane lifted the crate to reveal an old engine named Stephen. His wood was worn, and he had rust holes in his boiler. He hadn't run in years. Surprise! The old engine peeped. Victor said he'd have Stephen fixed up in no time. The Earl told Thomas he had a special job for Stephen, but it's best not to say anything yet. I won't say a word, said Thomas. I promise. Victor worked quickly. Soon Stephen was good as new. You looked really useful again, Thomas peeped. Stephen had told the engines about his early days. I worked so fast, they called me the Rocket, he said. But what job would he do now? As the others rolled away to work, Thomas saw that Stephen looked sad. So Thomas broke his promise and told Stephen that the Earl had a special job for him. Stephen was very excited. Thomas, James, and Percy steamed to the Earl's estate inside the castle walls. They were amazed to see a giant platform on rails. The Earl called it the Traveler. You three will move the Traveler into place for the men. You must be careful to keep the platform stable. Meanwhile, Stephen wanted to know about his special job, so he rolled off to Brenham Docks. There's no work here for an old engine like you, Cranky said. Next, Stephen went to Blue Mountain Quarry. We can always use help, Luke peeped, but the trucks Stephen tried to pull were too heavy. He steamed and strained, but they wouldn't move. When I work in a mine, the trucks weren't this heavy, says Stephen. Are there any mines around here? Scarloey told him there was an old mine near the castle ruins. I don't think anyone works there now, he said. Stephen found the entrance to the abandoned mine. He sighed. There's no job on this island for me. Nearby, Thomas was working with the troublesome trucks. Suddenly, the trucks slipped loose and roared down the hill, right towards Stephen. Stephen had no choice but to push into the mine. His funnel hit the roof and fell off. Rocks crashed down behind him, sealing up the entrance. Stephen searched for a way out. He crept around dark bends and through empty tunnels, but the tracks just went in circles. The only thing he found was an old wooden crate. Thomas and Percy searched for Stephen. At the entrance to the old mine, Thomas saw something familiar lying on the ground. It was Stephen's bundle. Thomas chopped away to get Jack the Digger. Jack cleared the mine entrance and Thomas raced in. "Stephen! Stephen!" he peeped. Stephen heard Thomas, but he was too weak to move or even whistle. Finally, Thomas turned a corner and saw a welcome sight. Thomas pushed Stephen out of the mine. The Earl was there to greet them. "I found a big wooden chest in the mine," Stephen said. "Wonderful!" the Earl exclaimed. "But first we must get you ready for tomorrow. You are an engine with a special job to do." The next day, an excited crowd gathered around Alfstead's castle. "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, engines and coaches," said the Earl. "Let me introduce my special steam engine, Stephen. He and Millie will be happy to show you the grounds." Stephen's new funnel glittered like gold. It reminded Thomas of something. "Stephen found something I thought was lost forever," the Earl said. "King Godred's long-lost crown." Thomas realized what Stephen's funnel looked like. A crown. The engines cheered for Stephen. He wasn't the fastest or the strongest, but he was really useful, and today he was a king. Risky Rails. Blue Mountain Quarry was a very busy place. Owen moved equipment up and down the steep walls. Rusty shunted trucks of slate. The quarry engines were smaller and lighter than the other engines and ran on special tracks. Paxton, a visiting diesel, was impressed by the hard-working narrow gauge engines. Suddenly, a rumble. London Bridge began to collapse. Rheneas saw the danger ahead and tried to stop, but his heavy load pushed him across the bridge. Rheneas was safe. Everyone was relieved. Then they saw poor Paxton, half buried in stone. He wasn't hurt, but he needed some repairs. Sir Topham had asked Thomas to work in Paxton's place. "I like working with my narrow gauge friends," he peeped. He chugged off to the quarry, where he was met with whistles of welcome. The work at the quarry was hard, but Thomas enjoyed it. Suddenly, a small green engine darted out of the tunnel. "Hello," Thomas peeped, but the engine rolled into another tunnel without answering. The next morning, Thomas saw the little green engine again. "Who are you?" Thomas asked. The little engine puffed off without answering. Thomas tried to follow. "Go, Luke!" Skarloey cried as he and the other narrow gauge engines blocked Thomas. "Who is Luke?" Thomas asked Skarloey. "Why does he run away?" "He hides because long ago he did something very bad," Skarloey said. "He's afraid that if he's found, he'll be sent away from Sodor forever." Thomas promised to keep Luke's secret. Later, Thomas steamed off alone to think. "Don't worry, Luke," he said aloud. "I'll find a way to help you. Someone was watching." The next day, Luke emerged from a tunnel and approached Thomas. "I'm sorry I hid from you," he said. "Will you be my friend?" "I like that," Thomas replied. Thomas and Luke worked together at the boulder drop. Thomas asked Luke why he had to hide. They didn't notice that Paxton, who had returned to the quarry, was listening as Luke told his story. "I came to the island of Sodor by boat," Luke began. "There was also a little yellow engine who spoke a strange language. While I was being lifted off the boat, I bumped the yellow engine and he went splashing into the sea." Paxton couldn't believe what he had heard. He raced off to tell Diesel. At that moment, an idea flew into Thomas's funnel. "I know what I'll do," he said. "I'll find out what happened to that little yellow engine. Maybe he's at the Diesel works." Thomas was shocked to hear Paxton repeating Luke's story to Diesel. "We'll have to tell," said Diesel. "Luke will have to leave Sodor forever." Thomas had to find the little yellow engine. He chucked to the steamworks to talk to Victor. "That engine was me," Victor said. Victor's story about his journey to Sodor matched Luke's, but there was one big difference. "The chains holding my wheels were broken," he said. "That's why I slid into the sea when the green engine bumped me. When Cranky fished me out, I was in a terrible state." "It was an accident," peeped Thomas. "And you were repaired." "Yes," said Victor. "I chose to be painted red, a new color for my bright new life." "I have to tell Luke," Thomas said. "Is Luke the little green engine?" asked Victor. "Yes," said Thomas, "and he needs your help." Later, Diesel and Paxton found Luke at the quarry. Luke rolled up the narrow gauge tracks where Thomas and the other engines couldn't follow. "You can't hide now," shouted Diesel. "Sir Topperhat is coming to kick you off Sodor. Even Thomas can't save you." "Yes, I can," Thomas peeped as he sped into the quarry. Rocky and Owen helped Thomas climb all the way up the quarry's walls. But Thomas's wheels were too big for the narrow gauge tracks at the top. They jumped off the rails, and Thomas rolled towards the edge of the cliff. "Help!" Thomas peeped. Just then Luke came around the bend. "Watch out, Thomas!" cried Diesel. "He's going to push you off." Just like he did to that yellow engine. "Don't worry," said Luke. "I'll pull you back to Owen." And slowly but surely he pulled Thomas back towards the platform. Luke felt strong. Luke got Thomas safely to Owen's platform, but the two engines weighed too much for Owen. The platform began to drop straight down. "Cinders and ashes," peeped Thomas. Gears whined, sparks flew, but Owen brought Thomas and Luke safely down. Just then, Sir Thomas had arrived with Mr. Percival, the narrow gauge controller. They were confused and angry. Then Victor steamed into the quarry. "Luke, you didn't push me," he said. "It was an accident." Sir Topham Hatt was upset with Diesel. "You didn't find out what really happened," he said, "and the real story was what matters." "Well done, Thomas," said Sir Topham Hatt. "Today is a happy day for Mr. Percival and his engines. Thomas has made it a happy day, sir," Luke said. "He's my hero and my friend." Thomas and all his friends, new and old, whistled happily. Well, that was the end of that big book that I read to you all. I'm not sure what part I like best. I think I like how Luke, the Green Engine, was willing to help out Thomas so he doesn't fall or crash or anything. Luke must be a very kind and caring engine, just like Thomas is. Thank you for tuning in to tonight's bedtime story video. And for what Shelley Duvall said, when you write stories, you can make believe anything. And when you dream, you can make believe anything too. So, I hope you all have sweet dreams and hope to see you next time.